Tonight, we'll investigate the killers who target police and show how officers are responding. And we'll ask Attorney General Pam Bondi's advisor, Adam Goodman, which job she's up for in Washington. Plus, we'll remember the attack on Pearl Harbor from the men who were there. This is Money, Power, and Politics.
Yeah, and Marissa, we're going to start with President-elect Donald Trump, now Times Person of the Year, and his stock is going up with voters.
Yeah, in the Bloomberg polls, it shows that his approval has shot up 50%, and he's making waves by going after Carrier and Boeing and putting the Pentagon on notice.
Yeah, he surely is. And Mr. Trump accused Boeing specifically of driving up costs for the next Air Force One, which he puts at $4 billion. And a defense report flagged another $125 billion that could be saved at the Pentagon.
It found 1 million people working in back office jobs compared to the 1.3 million active military personnel. Sources told Fox News Pentagon leadership tried to bury that report. And we could have some big changes in state government. Attorney General Pam Bondi could be heading to Washington.
Yeah, she's met with President-elect Trump repeatedly, and on top of that, she knows him fairly well. And given Bondi's focus on the issue of drug abuse, Trump could pick her to be the next drug czar. But Bondi is not talking about that.
I'm not going to confirm or deny anything right now. And, you know, I went to New York at the request of the President of the United States-elect, at his request. And so I was up there meeting with him, and frankly, I don't think anyone should come out of those meetings and talk about anything that was said in those meetings.
But Ms. Bondi added there was one exception to that, Marissa. What was it?
That Adam Goodman could tell us and fill us in on her meeting in Washington.
Her close friend and strategist said, you know, we're on a scale of 1 to 10, about 11 or 12.
One exception.
That's right. So tell us, what is she going to be in Trump's administration?
What Pam is, first of all, she had a great meeting with the president-elect. Yeah, that certainly is something that she's already shared. She's saying the right thing. I mean, you know, everyone wants to know who's in, who's not, what they're going to do. She's more interested in making sure the president-elect gets off on the right foot. She was obviously a very big early supporter of his, and whatever Pam Bondi chooses to do to support the president-elect will be meaningful.
Now, if you think she's going to be the next drug czar, just stand there and blink. Not going to say no insight.
Well played, Frank. Well played.
Oh, we get nothing.
Dadgummit.
And switching gears to something that happened last week, he takes a phone call from the president from Taiwan. Is that a good thing or a bad thing in your eyes?
Well, look, it depends. It's in the eyes of the beholder, Marissa. I mean, we've had, you know, a foreign policy that's been long in diplomacy, I think, and short on results. He clearly is communicating. He's going to have a very direct, more blunt approach to communicating with world powers. I think that, as you know, has to do with the One China policy, and not violating the One China policy by having any real communication with Taiwan. I'm very happy he did that. I think he's sending a signal not just to China, but to world leaders around the planet that there's going to be a different way we're going to do things. We're going to be direct, we're going to be clear, and we're going to want things to happen, and we're going to rest less on past laurels and depend more on what we need to do, all of us, to succeed.
Okay, Adam, before we say goodbye to you, one last question. If Pam Bondi does get a big job in Washington, might you be joining her in Washington?
Well, Pam Bondi is not only one of my true and closest friends, she also is one of the greatest talents. And whatever I could do to help Pam Bondi, obviously I would do. But for me to leave the grand state, the Sunshine State of Florida, that would be a heavy lift for anyone to ask.
Adam Goodman, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, Craig, well, we had a very special delivery today.
We did. Look at this. We won 5 Emmy Awards this year for work just came in that we've done on our show, Money, Power, Politics, and we are so proud of our team. That's why we want to show off a little bit. I'm going to start with our Trail Tales series, which won for commentary and for perspective.
We tell the stories of 2016 in the form of a documentary.
The wall that pitted brother against brother was winding down. General Trump took over the Twitter lines and used it to feed his war machine.
Prior to the Great Republican War, Twitter was a novelty. Trump used it as a great weapon of war.
To the Republican elite, he was a clown or an angry old crank.
Grrr, just angry all the time. Folks, Donald Trump is not a serious person. This is a carnival act.
But the brash general's colorful observations captivated a people tired of politics as usual.
Trump has never seen a thin person drinking Diet Coke?
He must be smart, because he says his IQ is the highest. For he extends best wishes to all, even the haters and losers.
His vast communication network overwhelmed the establishment that was still using flip phones from a bygone era.
All right, working our way down the list,
Yeah.
our team also won for our work in Cuba and our investigations of federal drug laws.
And to that end, it brings us to a little snippet with those federal drug laws we're going to call Elvie's Day at the Beach.
When you stroll down this South Florida beach, you may notice the manicured palms and rolling waves. Maybe the sailboat on the horizon. Or the lady opening a large tin full of pot. She smokes in plain view. Around 10 joints a day. Who is your dealer?
Uncle Sam is my supplier.
That's right. The same federal government that claims marijuana has no accepted medical use has sent Elvie Mashika nearly 100,000 joints. She gets them to treat her glaucoma for free.
The epitome of hypocrisy and stupidity.
As we investigated that, we found out that federal lawmakers, many of them, had no idea that our government sends taxpayer-funded pot to people in Florida while banning pot in the state of Florida.
That is very ironic. And our team also won an Emmy for our work with veterans and investigations of the VA.
Yeah, and here's something that really struck me from a former VA scheduler right here in Tampa.
It's possible that I could be responsible for one of those people's deaths and not even know it.
McSwain said he was trained to log when veterans want to be seen, but when those desired dates did not match up with what was available, he said his managers told him to stop.
When it's more than 14 days difference, it pops an alert on those supervisors. And what the supervisors were doing, not all of them, what they were doing, they would come, hey, why'd you put that as the desired date? Well, that's what the patient wanted, that's how we were trained. Oh, well, no, don't do it like that.
After the VA scandal broke last year, revealing deadly delays across the nation, McSwain says his managers told him to stop generating those wait time alerts. He says they told him to ignore the veterans' requests, book whatever's available, and claim that's what the veterans wanted, even if it's months down the road.
When it says, what is the patient's desired date? Instead of using that date, we use the date of the appointment that we actually give them. That way, it shows no gap.
And he claims veterans who complained had to wait even longer.
Vets that should have been seen like at a top priority passed over because of the way providers feel about them. Like, oh, I hate that guy. Oh, that guy's annoying.
And in the call centers, McSwain said his former coworkers made them wait even more by evading the hold alert.
They've implemented a system to where if you sit on hold for too long, it'll give you the option to request a callback. Right before the recording would get to that step, the clerks would pick up the phone and put it back on hold and hang it down again, and it resets that timer.
And he says veterans' consults to see specialists piled up until they disappeared.
Literally pushed in a drawer?
Yeah. There's been times where stacks of consults have disappeared, and people, where'd all the consults go?
Again, he claims this all played out after the VA promised to change its ways and restore our trust. And as he thinks back on his time as a VA scheduler, Nick McSwain breaks down in tears.
For them to come back here and be treated like that at really the only place that they have.
Because he cannot stop thinking about the ailing vets who trusted them.
Oh my God, how could you do that?
Now, coming up, we're going to shift gears and take a closer look at killers who target law enforcement and what our government can do about it.
And Lloyd Sowers has a story of a serial killer, the victim who escaped, and how it changed her life. After the break.
So, Marissa, before the break, we thanked our whole team for a big night at the Emmys this week, and we want to especially thank our Emmy-winning storyteller, Lloyd Sowers.
Yeah, Lloyd has a story of Lisa Nolan in tonight's Spotlight.
It seemed that every day another body was found. A serial killer was preying on women, many of them prostitutes from Tampa's notorious Strip. It was a frightening time.
It frightened me because where I worked at, I used to have to ride a bicycle. And I used to always wonder and worry, would I be the next victim? And then you'd think, it can't happen to me. But it did.
Lisa Nolan was just 17. She'd been in foster care and sexually abused by a relative's boyfriend. She thought about suicide, even on her way home that night, from her job at a donut shop. He grabbed her off her bike.
I remember pleading with God, whatever you do, just don't let him kill me.
He was serial killer Bobby Joe Long, who had eluded police and murdered and raped at least 10 women. And so it began for Lisa.
Held 26 hours, gunpoint. He raped me over and over again, lost count.
Lisa was tied up and blindfolded, but she says being a victim of abuse in the past actually helped her deal with the killer.
So I told him, I said, listen, it's unfortunate how we met. I could be your girlfriend, I could take care of you, and no one ever has to know. Reverse psychology, I guess. Coddling him like a 4-year-old child. It worked.
Under her blindfold, she got a glimpse of the Magnum nameplate on his car. She counted the number of steps up to his apartment, made sure to put her fingerprints all over his bathroom.
At one time, he placed my hand on his face. I saw his face through my hands. Pop marks, small mustache, small ears, short hair, clean cut, kind of stouty but not overweight, big guy.
At one point, she told him she had to care for her sick father. Finally, after 26 hours, he dropped her off not far from where the ordeal began.
So he drove off. I pulled my blindfold down, and the first thing I saw was this gorgeous, beautiful oak tree. And that's the moment I knew my life was about to change for the good. Branches of new life.
A life 31 years later as a deputy sheriff.
No one's gonna get hurt on my watch. That was my motivation to become a police officer.
And I love every single student in this school.
Lisa is now a school resource officer at a middle school not far from where it all happened.
This is my calling.
Working to protect kids from the kind of monster that preyed on her, who still sits on death row, still alive 31 years later.
And if you got a call tonight saying that they're going to execute him tomorrow, do you want to go?
Yes. If the governor calls me up and asks if I want to sit in the execution, yes.
She says she'll wear a T-shirt with Long's name on the front.
And on the back, overdue. Long being his last name. Long overdue. Exclamation point.
I like helping children.
She loves her job, and she doesn't have the nightmares that used to haunt her.
It's like in my dreams, I'm always being hurt. I want to finally one day not hurt. And just to be able to let that pain go, you know, and be healed.
She says her healing is protecting others.
I'm not a victim. I'm no longer a victim. I'm a survivor and I'm a warrior. There's no victim here.
A story of empowerment from the clutches of a killer. The one that got away is now the protector. I'm Lloyd Sowers for Money, Power, and Politics.
And please check out more of our Spotlight reports, as well as our investigations of money and politics. Search for Craig Patrick's Money, Power, and Politics. Click subscribe right there at the top of the page. You can also watch our extended interviews, our commentaries, our parody and humor segments, and of course, full prior shows that you may have missed. Now we have some terrible developments, particularly in Georgia today. 2 officers were shot in South Georgia, and this follows a wave of ambush attacks on law enforcement, Marissa, all across the nation.
Yeah, and it has triggered a debate in government over how to respond. For example, California could make attacking an officer a hate crime. And coming up, we'll examine the options and talk to the daughter of an officer in Georgia who reveals how the violence is affecting her family. Today, 2 officers were gunned down just outside of Georgia's Southwestern State University. One was killed and the other is in critical condition.
Yeah, and this year you have 63 officers who have died in shootings. That's up 66% from this point last year. So, Morris Diggs asked the family of an officer in Georgia how they're dealing with it.
This polished teenager supports her dad and other family members whose everyday jobs are in law enforcement.
I have grown up in a law and order type family. I think it kicked in about middle school is when I realized he was really making a change and that there was a chance he wouldn't come home. He actually has a dangerous job.
It is alarming to see in the nation officers become targets indiscriminately for those espousing hate toward the badge. Inside those families, the headlines are sickening. Morgan, who is 17, agreed to share her thoughts.
How do you cope with that thought?
I think it's terrible, and I think it's the most un-American thing you can do is to target the people who protect the other citizens. And it's just, it hurts, it hurts. I've grown up always holding my breath, but seeing him after one of those attacks really makes me proud that he still stands tall as an officer.
I don't know if I can follow that up, but go ahead.
Well, I'm going to ask you about your thoughts, hearing what your daughter just said.
The veteran Cobb cop got a little emotional hearing his girl express what he says she typically keeps inside.
The climate in my 30 years in law enforcement has totally changed. I have never been shot. I've lost 2 buddies in a call out. We were on a negotiation. It still moves me today, as you can tell. But I had to go to the hospital with both my buddies and watch them die. That was my assignment, to be with them.
There's been a lot of bad days and I don't always catch them, but I think he's always been a strong man and he always comes home with a smile on his face. So I never really know when he has a bad day because he makes sure it stays at work.
And again, that was Morris Diggs reporting for us. Now coming up, we remember the attack at Pearl Harbor 75 years later.
And the rockets red glare, the bombs burst.
In Hawaii, a tribute to those we lost 75 years ago in the attack at Pearl Harbor, which of course drove the U.S. into World War II.
And our photojournalist John Deal takes us back to the day.
December 7th, 1941.
I saw the ships, some of them sitting on the bottom, some of them capsized, and it was all still coming out and all still burning, floating on the water, and still burning and smoking.
A date which will live in infamy.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special news bulletin. The Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii by air, President Roosevelt has just announced.
I regret to tell you that very many American lives have been lost.
I understand there are around 2,400.
After the attack on Pearl Harbor, several squadrons of Japanese planes came in from the south, dropping bombs and incendiary bombs over the city.
I guess just so much shock I didn't think about being scared or anything like that.
No matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory.
And that's our show tonight on the 75th anniversary. Thank you all for joining us. We'll see you again tomorrow night.
Have a good night.